Yeah, right? Okay. Um, this gray is really hard to see as a preview, so I'm just going to go ahead and quickly change this. I'm just going to go to my preview settings, and I will change this to something that's maybe a little lighter, brighter. There we go. So I can see the edges a little better there. All right. Let's go. All right, so there are my components, right? And some of the things that I went over on Monday was what I'm doing here in each of these stages. So first of all, here are my components. All right. Yes, yes. And maybe I'll just go ahead and bake those into Rhino so I have those three-dimensionally in my model, right? First, I'm going to go into Rhino, and I'll just create a new layer, hit that plus sign. I'll call this shade components. Yep. I'll give them a color so I can sort of tell them apart from everything else. Let's go with a light blue. Why not? And then these are the widgets. These three widgets are the ones creating the surfaces. So I'll go ahead and bake these one at a time. Bake. Bake them into that shade components layer. Oh, wait. Before I do that, each one of these is three separate triangles. I'm passing them that join to join them into one polysurface each. So I'll bake that join widget, right? That's the actual polysurfaces. There we go. Now when I close Grasshopper, you can see that I have a static Rhino version here. Okay. All right, well, let's open up Grasshopper again. Now we need to prepare this for laser cutting, and that's what these purple boxes are for, to sort of group things together, call them out with a title and some comments to help you out here. But again, just as a reminder, let me go ahead and expand the size of Grasshopper window here. There we are. All right. This is just simply making some text labels that I can then apply later, both in the three-dimensional model as well as the two-dimensional layout. Right. So I'm just making an ordered list of numbers, cross-referencing together, join them together as strings, and then passing them as text to create a set of text tags. And those look like they would go right over here. Yeah, they're right here. See them? 81, 82, 83, 84. That's really important because when you start laying these things out and you're like, well, which corner is which? Where do I start? Which corner do I start from? If you also label the 3D model, you can go back to your Rhino model, open that up and go, oh, okay, 0, 0 goes in this corner over here. I can see that three-dimensionally. Okay, this box is all about just joining these things together and then unrolling them. All right, so again, all it's doing, let's just follow the steps. I join them together, so now each shading component in the cell is one polysurface, three triangles joined together, right? So I should have 100 of them. Yep. And I'm using the Unroll widget, which comes from Lunchbox Tools. It's not native to Grasshopper. So I need to install the Lunchbox program, plugin, right? And again, remember, I showed you that yesterday, Monday. You just go into Rhino and say Package Manager, and you get a list of third-party plugins that have been approved and tested for safety. So you just say Lunchbox. There it is, and you can just say Install. It installs it. You close Rhino, open it back up. Next time you open up Rhino, it'll load in the plugin, and you get the Lunchbox tab up here and Lunchbox Machine Learning tab up here. And if I go to Utilities, there's my Unroll BREP. But now when I double click and just search, I should have an Unroll here. Right? Is it telling me that I'm a layer? Like what? Unroller strip of quads, unroll. Oh, Ernol. I mistyped it. There you go. Unroll BREP. There we go. Yeah. Anywho. And all I'm doing is simply then creating a grid of points to then begin to sort of spread out all of those flattened components, right? All of the sort of unfolded components out onto a grid, right? And I use that same grid to then place the labels, right? And so with this open, you can see, right over here, there's all my panels unfolded. Here's all my labels along with them, right? And I'm ready to just sort of bake those in the right places, right? Now there's one other step here that I didn't show you on Monday, but these are all the sort of panels moved toward the right spot in the grid, right? That move widget. What do I do after that? Well, first of all, I'm looking at this going, that's a poly surface. The laser cutter wants lines and curves, right? So we need to get the edges of these poly surfaces. And there's a really nice thing, this is really good too. What we can do is we can use this widget called getting BREP edges. BREP edges. And it gives us the edges, but it also breaks them down into some really useful categories. Okay. Let me just show you where that's at. If I go to surface, and just like I can explode a BREP, deconstruct a BREP and find its edges, faces, and vertices, over here I can find its edges, right? That's what I'm just plugging into here. And it gives me the outer edges, right? The edges that have surface attached to one side, but then there's this air on the other side. It's commonly referred to in the business naked edges, right? But the sort of outer edge, right? The sort of through cut. And then we also get then all the interior edge curves, right? Those are the ones I'm going to score. And I'm going to bake those on a different layer and put them on a different color, right? So this is actually a really nice tool to sort of separate automatically all the sort of outer through cuts and all the inner sort of score cuts. And so that's what you can see here. I've just sort of placed these in different widgets so I can bake each group out in its own layer. But if I select just the naked edges, the outer edges, right, the silhouette edges, right, you can see they're highlighted. And if I just select the inner edges, those are for the scores, those are highlighted. Okay? That's a really handy tool. Again, Grasshopper didn't always have that. All right? So now I just need to basically go through and bake this, and then bake these text tags, right? And so I'm just going to, again, make a few layers and label each one. I'm really anal about this because sometimes you want to just be able to select the labels and move those relative to the components, just to make sure that they're totally inside the components and things like that. So that's why I keep them all separated on different layers as long as I can, right? Now when I copy and paste something into the template for laser cutting, then I start to put things on the right layers, like cut versus score. But until then, I try to keep things as separate as possible. All right, so I'll call this one outer through cuts, inner score cuts, and I'll call these labels. Yeah. All right, and then I'll just bake each of these in turn. Here's these. I will bake these. Outer through cuts, there we are. Then I'll do the same for these. Bake, inner score cuts. And then I'll go down here and bake these labels and the labels. The other thing you'll notice about these labels is that once you bring these labels and bake them into Rhino, they're all fucked up. And in fact, we need to reformat them anyways. Kyle mentioned it, right? For particular fonts, make sure they're particular size and things like that. So I have text elsewhere. I'm just going to simply say, since I put these on the labels layer, I can just right-click on the labels layer and select all the objects that are there. Right? Then I can go to the color wheel and look at the properties. Right? Since these are actually text, not only do we have the typical properties, but we also have text properties. So in this case, I can say the model space scale is 1. Let's say I want these to be 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125. And I want them to be a specific font, single line fonts, SLF, and then Rhino. Let's see, there it is. It's SLF RHN Architect. When I zoom in on them now, they look not so bad. Now, actually, I think I do want to make them smaller. Let's see, 0.0625. Let's make them 1/16 of an inch. I mean, I don't like them so much that I want to see them like really large, right? Model space. Oh, mask margin. Oh, sorry, I got to do it here. Here's the height. 0.125. Let's try that first. Yeah, that's not bad. Last but not least, I have them all organized. You can see that they're sliding off, some of them. And so I'm just going to go into top view. Let's turn off this grid so you can see a little better. Stupid grid. And you see how these are like not quite on. Some of them are and some of them aren't. I'm just going to move them all at the same time and just make sure that they're all going to be, oh, see, yeah, you have to come over here and point to move from. Let's see if that looks a little more consistent across now. It doesn't look so bad. Right. I'm going to go back to those layers. Again, I'm always sort of looking at layers, trying to make sure things are on or off, they're on the right thing. Change the colors if I need to. The colors for laser cutting are very particular, but when you're just modeling, the colors can just, add contrast so you can see these types of objects and they stick out from these other types of objects, right? So, maybe I come in here and start to assign a few colors just so I can sort of keep things straight in my head here. Right. Okay. Same with these ribs, right? So when I unrolled these ribs, I joined certain things together, like, selecting everything on the cut layer and joining, selecting everything on the V strips and the U strips layers and joining everything together. But the last thing I need to do is fix these stupid text tags, these labels. Some of them came in as exploded as curves that could be scored, but you see how this V would take like 3 times longer to score because it has twice or almost 3 times the amount of line work. So this is where spending 5 minutes in Rhino might save you 45 minutes in laser cutting time, right? So that's the trade-off I'm sort of going in my head on, right? So in this case, I might just start to add these quickly. Let's see, score. Yeah, all right, so I might just delete some of these things away. It's annoying, some of these things are actually exploded. Hit that text tab, do the same thing, use the same scale. 1/8 inch self, let's see, says self. Single line font, Rhino. Let's go with VO. And I'm just gonna place that. And if I can be really intentional with where I'm placing it. The other thing I need to do is make sure that these are on the same, or on the right layer, right? So I wasn't careful, and I put it on the shade components layer. That's not good. I put it on the score layer. And I'll make the score layer actually my active layer with that check mark and go through and redo all of these, right? Just simply say, next one is V1. And then the next one is just right click to repeat command, last command, V2. Hit OK and start to place these. And again, you can always come back in here and select the other stuff away that's junky and looks terrible. All right. Okay. So that's how I'm doing this. Let me just quickly do this over and over again. Get at least one row. Damn, that 3 is like a series of arcs. Yeesh. Anybody ever do graphic design, like typeface design? You know, like design your own fonts? It's truly an art, a magnificent one at that. But it takes a lot of patience, and getting something like just the right set of arcs for the interior of a 3 is just, so V4, etc. Okay, so that's how I got here, right? Start with the surface. If you already have your component worked out, right, everything else is largely automated. It's just a matter of making sure that you're methodically going through the steps, you're methodically keeping things clean, you're methodically keeping things in the right layers, you're methodically making sure things don't overlap where they need to, right? From here, I think probably you noticed that I could have tightened up the spacing in my grid to minimize waste and maximize the amount of yield out of the sheet stock I give it. Here I clearly need to start to rearrange these. That's why I showed you what I was doing right before class here, the full demonstration file, where, let's see, I'm quite literally trying to sort of lay these things out. And from here, I could start to make my, turn on ortho, start to make my 32 by 18 sheets, and then understand how many of them I need, right? And so it looks like I could probably fit all of these on one sheet, especially if I just got a little more creative and spend just a little more time rotating some things around. Come on, Rhino. There we go. But let's see. Yeah, certainly those fit, and I can make these things fit. The other thing to mention is that I could have maybe shrunk these down or tightened them up to make them fit. But it looks like right now, the way I have them, I'd probably have to fit these across 3 sheets and still have a bunch of goofy leftovers that aren't very useful at the end. So that's something to consider as you're working on this. Let me just demonstrate that. In Grasshopper, of course, since I made this grid, sorry, let me just plug these things in again. Ay, ay, ay. Where is it? Right? I could just as easily change that cell spacing so I don't have as much space in between. I just want to make sure that I don't have any overlaps, right, to tighten those things up before I bake them in, okay? So there's a lot to consider, right, admittedly. And the more times you do it, the better you get at it, right? And this is a simulation, right? I mean, you know, you're not going to probably make a grid shell prototype at this size to sit on your desk anytime in the near future, besides this class. But again, as you begin to progress through your schooling and then through the profession, working out those AXP hours and things like that, right? You start to understand, oh, when I draw a line and it's curved, I start to understand the implications downstream, right? Or if I draw an angle, a sharp angle, or I draw a 90-degree angle, right? Like what those implications are, right? And you start to think about what material systems they are. You begin to understand knowledge of those material systems can help guide how you design, right? Yeah, of course. We all know that. Okay, so there's a couple of things here that I'll show. Just quickly on Canvas, part 2, right? There we go. All right. Kyle, thanks again to Kyle for coming in. That's the link to the digital fabrication laser cutter page. The font that we talked about, if you can't find it, can't remember what it says, it's right here, SLF, it's an alphabetical order in Rhino. And the recording for today will go down there as well, okay? I'll show you again a few things when it comes to now looking at these layers and changing the colors so that they line up or match up with the cutting and scoring that they have. I also wanted to point out this other thing, right? This is really important. When is the first prototype due? Everybody panic. I'd like to see them in a week from now. Now, look, if you sign up for a time and you can start to laser cut it by Friday, and you have the weekend to put it together. Or look, I under no illusions that everybody will have it ready for next Wednesday, right? Because we'll have a glut of people trying to rush to get laser cut all at the same time. Okay? But last year, I recognized that and then pushed it back a week, and then they still screwed around, and then there was a big glut at the end of that week. And so, it was like mission creep. It just kept going. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, it was never a problem until last year. I don't understand, getting 30 or 40 of these together on a table and looking at them all at once as a group and talking about these things and learning from each other. Last year just went sideways. So look, if for some reason your laser cutter time got bumped or there was no time until that Wednesday, and you'll send me a sob story via email, and fine, all right, we'll work that out, right? But I'd like for everybody to have a sense of urgency to try this, right? Go through the motions, don't wait till Sunday evening, and then, but get a time for the laser cutter, reserve your time, then you have a deadline for yourself, right? And then if you say, well, shoot, Josh, like, I cut on first thing on Monday, like, do you have some time before studio on Friday? I can meet with you to, something's not working, or whatever. Fine, I'm happy to do that. Very happy to do that. You guys notice I'm sitting there like a troll in my cave with no windows, right? I have lots of work to do. I have no problem, but I'm around Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, because that's when those are the days I teach here. If anybody wants to walk in or knock on the door or shoot me a quick email or whatever, right? Not a problem at all. I'm quite accessible, more accessible than most of my colleagues. Some of them I haven't seen since pre-pandemic. I don't even know what they're doing. Maybe they grew mustaches and they're embarrassed. I don't know what's going on. There's mohawks and stuff. Shit, I don't know. All right? But I'm here, like it or not. And so lean on me if you need some help, some assistance, right? Some of you have. They'll tell you that I'm here, and I am obsessive compulsive with checking emails and things like that. Okay. All right, so let's talk just a little bit more before we stop the recording and we go for the day. Right? What's this? Oh, Windows or something. Windows wants to show me the news, as if I care. All right, so I have all of these layers here, right? And of course, you could copy and paste these into a different, all the objects into a different file if you wanted to. But if I'm just looking at the layers I have, and I just want to make sure everything's prepped for laser cutting, I'm going to do several things. One, I'm going to think in terms of choreography, right? I'm going to think in terms of what gets cut first and what gets next, and what stuff gets cut last, and if there needs to be a first and a last, right? So for instance, I'm going to cut out a bunch of pieces, and a lot of those pieces, I'm going to have little intricate details I need to score into them. Therefore, I'm going to do all the scoring first before I cut pieces around that might accidentally start to blow around and shift after the fact, right? Right, so thinking again a few steps ahead comes in handy. So in this case, I'm going to show you how to change the colors, and then I'll show you how to change the order, and just thinking this through, right? So I have a shell surface, and I would probably save this file out as a different file, and then blow all the stuff away that doesn't pertain to laser cutting in this new copy, right? But I'm just turn that off. I'll turn off the default layer. I'll turn off the shading components. Those are all three-dimensional things. Then I have all of this, right? All this stuff that I'm going to laser cut. And from Kyle, I know that red is going to be through cut and blue is going to be score. Right, so let me show you how to change that. Shading components, V-strips, here we go. This is through cut. So I'll go ahead and just click on the layer color. By default, all the objects in this layer will just use the default layer color as their color. And so here I can change their RGB values by simply saying I just want RGB values. And what did I say this is going to be? This is going to be three cut. So I'm going to turn up red all the way to 255. The others will stay at 0. In case you didn't know what RGB values are, right? That's how one way to describe additive colors in screen space, right? So every color value has an R, a red, a green, and a blue value, and that range from 0 to 255. All zeros result in black, all 255s result in white. 255 in red, turn down the green and the blue to 0, you get red, right? True RGB red. And I can do that, rather than doing it individually, I can do it layer by layer. So I'll do that here as well. Here's red. Let's see what it looks like. 25500. Yep, perfect. The cut, those are going to be red. 25500. Perfect. Score. Let's set that to blue. Blue, 00255. RGB. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Score, scales, inner score cuts. Those are going to be blue. 00255. Text labels for scoring, those are going to be blue. 00255, blah, 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 blah. Let's see, outer cuts, those are going to be red. 25500. All right. And then last but not least, just for my own sort of sanity, I might then start to select all of the scoring ones. There's this one. I'll move it up in the hierarchy here, up to the top. And just as a reminder, hey, just print the blue first and then print the red, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like just thinking about the steps and how you might choreograph those things. And then I'll move the red up afterwards, right? In his template, he still had the gray background, and what you saw is that he had 255, 255, 255, a white line for any of the sort of margins and the sort of outline border, right? And I recommend that you use and draw that border, because then they can say print to fit screen, fit to print this at 18, click and click, and make sure that it's at the perfect scale, okay? But if you set it to white, then it won't show up, it won't print. So in this case, I'm just going to change my background color in Rhino back to gray, just so we can see that. Let's see, appearance, colors, sort of shitty gray, there we go. I mean crappy gray, I mean stupid looking gray. Maybe I'll just add a different layer for it down here and call it borders and margins. And I'll just double check and set these to 255, 255, 255. There we go. 254, no, 255, come on. Why? Had to really type that in? Jeez, anyway. Okay, and then set these to that layer, right? So I'm just going to go to its properties and change its layer down to borders and margins. All right, so now you can see it. Barely. It's there, right? And then from there, I would, again, inset 1/4 inch, rearrange things, make sure everything fits inside. Then you're ready to roll. Don't think that you have to take care of all of this out here before you set up a time for the laser. Set up a time for the laser cutter based on your availability, your class schedule, etc. Right? Give yourself a couple of days to figure this out, and then you have time while you're to work towards that deadline. That's simple. All right. So we'll have a critical mass of first prototypes a week from today. It's going to be so amazing. And in the meantime, I will prepare a few things to show you, because in parallel, you'll just be like, dude, I don't have time for more stuff. But I'll show you some things you can do later on in your workflows to start to measure shading performance and things like that. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. 7 more minutes, so I'll be here for 7 more minutes, but I understand if you guys trickle out. But I'm here. A lot of you had questions for me over email. I said, yeah, stop by office hours. A couple of you did. I'm around. Not every day of the week I'm around, but when I am, I'm available. So do just hit me up, okay? Occasionally I even try to eat lunch. I actually had somebody come in the other day for studio, and they said, I need your help. And I said, okay, let's sit down, let's talk. He said, oh, I have to go to lunch. And I'm like, well, I'd like to eat lunch too, but I'm offering to sit here with you and help you because you said you need help. I'm just hardcore like that, I guess. I don't know. Like, there'll be time to eat later, you know what I mean? How's it going?
Good.
Is it working?
So yeah.
Ah, yes.
The only thing is, like, if I were to increase the count, they go together.
The what?
So, like, if I do 10 by 10.
It's the heights, the depths. So that's way too spiky. I'd make it smaller. Once you put 10 by 10 on a surface, then start to look at the scale.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you still gonna record the first part without your recording?
I did that on Monday, so in fact I'm still recording.